وبكى بكاء شديدا. انتهت الحكاية بمعناها. والعلم واجب على كل مسلم هو أن يعلم جميع الفرائض وجوب جميع الفرائض التي فرضهن الله عليه، وتحريم جميع المحرمات التي حرمهن الله عليه. وأما العلم بكيفية فعل الشيء الواجب فلا يجب إلا عند إرادة مباشرته. فمن بلغ أو أسلم في شهر المحرم فمثلا كان الواجب عليه فورا أن يتعلم معنى الشهادتين وينطق بهما، ويتعلم وجوب الصلوات الخمس وما يجب من معرفة أركانها وأحكامها. ومن الواجب عليه أن يعرف وجوب الصوم والزكاة والحج وغيرها من الواجبات العينية، ويعرف تحريم الزنا والشرب الخمر وأخذ الأموال الناس بالباطل وغيرها من المحرمات الشرعية. ولكن لا يجب عليه أن يتعلم كيفية الصيام والحج إلا عند مجيء رمضان وإرادة الحج، ولا كيفية الزكاة إلا حتى يملك مالا يزكى ويجيء وقت إخراج الزكاة، والله أعلم. والمحرمات والواجبات العينية معروفة بين المسلمين لا تكاد تخفى، وإنما المهم معرفة الأحكام. نعم. ولا يكفيه إلا أن يتلقى جميع ذلك من عالم يخشى الله ويدين بالحق. والعامة تخطئ وتصيب، فإياك أن تفعل ما يفعلونه وتترك ما يتركونه اقتداء بهم، فإن الاقتداء لا يصح إلا بالعلماء العاملين. وقد عز اليوم عالم يعمل بعلمه. فإذا رأيت العالم في هذا الزمان يفعل شيئا أو يتركه مما يجهل كونه حقا أو باطلا، فلا تكتفي بمجرد رؤيته في الفعل أو تركه حتى تسأله عن وجه ذلك في الشرع وحكمه من الدين. فرض عليه من العلم إلى طول مدة، ولا يكاد تلحقه مشقة في ذلك لسهولته. ويكفي الطالب الفطن في تعلم ذلك أن يجلس مع العالم المتقن ساعة أو ساعتين من الزمان. وقد جاء أعرابي إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو يخطب على منبر، فسأله أن يعلمه مما علمه الله، فنزل عن منبره فعلمه، ثم صعد المنبر فأتم خطبته. وعلى الجملة فمن أراد أن يسلم ويظلم فعليه أن لا يدخل في شيء ولا يقيم على فعل شيء قد دخل فيه حتى يعلم حكم الله في ذلك الشيء من الواجب من الوجوب أو الندب أو الإباحة أو التحريم. فجميع الأشياء لا تخلو عن أحد هذه الأمور الأربعة. وأشبه أن هذا الأمر واجب على كل مسلم. ثم إن المؤمنين ينقسمون إلى عموم وخصوص. فالعموم قد يقعون في ترك الواجبات وفعل المحرمات، وأحسنهم من يبادر بالتوبة والاستغفار ولا يحرصون على فعل النوافل وينهمكون في المباحة. وأما الخصوص فيؤدون الواجبات ويتركون المحرمات في كل حال، ويحافظون على فعل المندوبات ويقتصرون من المباحات على ما يكون وسيلة إلى القيام بامتثال الأوامر واجتناب النواهي. وبالله التوفيق.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والعاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين، ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين نبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, our brother recited or read from the رسالة المعاونة والمظاهرة والمؤازرة للراغبين من المؤمنين في سلوك طريق الآخرة, or the book of assistance of Imam Abdullah bin Alawi al-Haddad. And I've previously mentioned to the brothers that they should bring copies of the books with them to class. And if you don't have access to the Arabic language, then bring a copy of the English version with you to class. The book of assistance is a work that has had an influence on the lives of hundreds of thousands of Muslims around the globe. And Imam al-Haddad rahimahullah ta'ala also, he authored this book in such a way that it is void of any objection. And therefore they said when this book was presented to some of those persons that were most critical of the Sufiya, of the Sufis, and they gave him a copy of the book of Imam al-Haddad and they removed his name from the book and the cover. They went through this book and they found it to be one that is extremely beneficial. So there is nothing in this book that is questionable. There is nothing in this book that somebody could raise an eyebrow for. And on top of it, the book is one that is authored in such a way that it encourages you and I to tread a path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be better Muslims, to be more serious students. So in this chapter, Imam al-Haddad rahimahullah ta'ala, he spoke about fulfilling your obligations towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and abstaining from that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. And in addition, he encouraged us in this chapter to exert ourselves in doing good deeds and nawafil, supererogatory acts. And thus in this chapter, in essence, he is covering the definition of taqwa. Because the definition of taqwa is to execute the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to abstain from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in addition to that, he added a third element, and that is exerting oneself in good deeds. And these reminders are so important for us. And he emphasized that a person that does not have knowledge is not able to do any of the above. Without knowledge, you cannot fulfill Allah's commandments. Without knowledge, you cannot abstain from His prohibitions. And without knowledge, you cannot truly exert yourself in good deeds. Right? And he commenced the way our brother Ansar started reading today. He made an example of a person that imagined he was doing good, but he was ignorant. And even though he was considered to be an abid, a worshipper of Allah, and somebody that made lots of ibadah, on account of ignorance, he was committing of the greatest of sins and the greatest of crimes. So this man, he was from Imam Haddad rahimahullah ta'ala. He said that Muhammad bin Ali Arabi, in his book Al-Wasaya, this is the famous Ibn Arabi al-Maliki, who wrote the Futuhat. Right? What does it sound, Shafi? But my mic was off, the sound was still there. Huh? Ala kulli hal. So Ibn Arabi was one of the great ulama of this ummah, and he authored many books. In his Futuhat, he narrated a story of a worshipper that came from Maghrib, Morocco. And he was known for ibadah and his tahajjud and his salah and his fasting and his dhikr and the recitation of Quran. But he was a jahil. And because he was a jahil, an ignorant person, despite his attempts of drawing close to Allah and exerting himself in worship, he was disobeying Allah in one of the worst ways. So Ibn Arabi said that this person, he was known for his exerting himself in ibadah, and he purchased a atan. Do you know what an atan is? The atan is a female donkey. A female donkey, so he purchased an atan. And he was not using the donkey not to plow grounds or not to carry water for him, until people began asking him and saying to him that why did you purchase the female donkey? We're not using it to plow grounds. You're not using it to carry water or carry goods. So he said that I've only purchased this donkey to protect my private part. And thus he was guilty of bestiality. He was having sexual relations with a donkey. And he, despite his efforts in ibadah, was unaware that this is something that is of the major sins within the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when they told him that you have been disobeying Allah in this way, he began crying intensely. And that brings us to the end of that story, and it illustrates how persons imagine that they are drawing closer to Allah, but because of ignorance, they are only distancing themselves further and further from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this may be an obvious ruling, and you and I may think to ourselves that I'm not so ignorant not to know that bestiality is haram. But how many other things do we engage in, or within our communities, how many other things do we engage in on a daily basis, and we don't know what the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is? And therefore, as Muslims, we must know and we must understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law encompasses everything in our existence. Every step you take in life, every decision you take in life, every purchase you make, every sale you make, every dentist appointment, every doctor's appointment, every time you have a gardener cleaning your yard, or cutting your grass, or someone removing rubble from your home, or an electrician, or a plumber, or somebody working on your pool, or somebody putting up an electric fence for you, or installing an inverter. Everything you do in existence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a law that applies. And if I'm not aware and familiar with the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I may be disobeying Him min hayth la adri, in such a way that I'm unaware that I'm disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the first thing that you and I must appreciate and acknowledge, that Allah's law is comprehensive and covers every single aspect of our lives. The sound is... Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law is comprehensive and covers every aspect of our life. There is no position I can find myself in, say that Allah has law, what I should be doing and what I should not be doing. And if I don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law, I need to go and find out. Even when it comes to the usage of the lavatory. Mahir, do you know what the lavatory is? Do you know what the lavatory is? A lavatory is just a fancy word for a toilet. Even the usage of the toilet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law applies. And therefore, one of the beautiful hadith that has come to us from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the hadith of Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu ta'ala. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, we all know that he was Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi had a long story. He lived for almost 200 years. And he met many priests and rabbis, and he was trained in various scriptures. And he spent many times with different priests, and they eventually advised him about the coming of a final prophet that you will find in the lands where there are palm trees, referring to Medina al-Munawwara. And he eventually made his way to Medina. He was captured as a slave. Some Jews in Medina purchased him. He didn't mind being a slave because he just wanted to be in Medina. His teachers all informed him that the coming of the final prophet, he will find the prophet in the lands of Medina and Yathrib, as it was described to him. And his story of Islam was the most beautiful story, because the priest under whom he studied, they told him that there are 3 ways in which you will come to know that he is the final prophet. They first gave a description and spoke about how the final prophet, but there were 3 things they said. If these 3 boxes are ticked, then he is the final prophet. What's the first? He doesn't accept zakah. Zakah is haram for him and his family. Number 2 is he accepts hadiyah. You give him a gift, he'll accept the gift. Number 3 is on his back he has a seal of prophethood. The Prophet ﷺ on his back, he had a protruding piece of flesh that in summer became swollen and in winter it shrunk, and it had some hairs on it. And we read that in the Shama'il, and it was found to the left side of his back, just beneath his shoulder, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that was the sign that he was the seal of all Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. It's called the Khatam al-Nubuwah. And Sayyidina Salman radiallahu ta'ala an, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam eventually performed the hijrah, he said as people anticipated the arrival of the final Prophet, he was among them, waiting for Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam to arrive in Medina. Right? And you and I can never imagine what the anticipation must have been like among the Sahaba as they awaited the arrival of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not just the Ansar, you must also remember that a large number of the Muhajirun, the immigrants from Makkah, they already left Makkah. The Prophet ﷺ was from the last that left Makkah to immigrate to Medina al-Munawwara. So not only is the Ansar waiting for the Prophet, the Muhajirun are also waiting. And I say this all the time. That had it not been for our mashayikh, jazakumullah khair, and our teachers, and the love we have for them, and the uns, the tranquility and peace and harmony and comfort that we find when we spend time in their company, then these meanings that the Sahaba try to explain within these narrations can never be understood. If you don't know what it's like waiting on Cape Town International Airport for a great scholar like Sayyid al-Habib Umar to arrive, and the anticipation and the build-up and the amazing experience you have when eventually they land and they come out of the airport, come closer to the front row. If you don't experience that, then how do you know what the Sahaba experienced? And therefore, these narrations can only be understood when you're connected to the pious in this ummah, to the knowers of Allah, to the arifin, to the salihin, especially if they're from the Ahlul Bayt, especially when they're from the family of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright? There are meanings that cannot be explained. There are meanings that must be experienced. And if your heart has not connected to the pious in this way, and if your heart hasn't experienced that anticipation, and if your heart hasn't experienced that comfort and that solace and that tranquility and that proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the company of the pious, right? Then khalas, there are things in life that your life is incomplete. There are things missing in your life that if you should only know what it is, you'll realize that you're actually being deprived at this point in time. And therefore, I often say about people that become critical of the salihin and the awliya, and they have bad things to say about them. You know, my response is just, masakin, poor people, they don't know what they're missing. They don't know what it's like to love and to be connected and to benefit and have istimtad, and they don't know. And I share this with you so that you develop within your heart a desire to experience it. And once you experience it, only then can you begin to appreciate what the Sahaba must have felt in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he entered, when he left, when he traveled, when he returned, when they traveled, when they came back. Like every meeting is a special meeting. Every gaze at them is a special gaze. Every gaze of theirs at you is special. Every conversation you have is special. You remember what words you shared with them and what words they shared with you. You remember jokes that they told you. You remember jokes that you told them. You remember laughter that you had together. Because every moment to them is special. There is nothing in this existence like their company. And therefore, Shaykh Shu'aib Abu Madian, he said that مَا لَذَّةُ الْعَيْشِ إِلَّا صُحْبَةُ الْفُقَرَاء. There's no true pleasure in life save their company. هم السلاطين والسادات والأمراء فاصحبهم وتأدب في مجالسهم وخل حظك مهما قدموك وراء. Their company, there's nothing like it. And if you have not experienced it, then you should know that there's something in your life that you still need to experience. And then that experience has various levels. That experience has various levels. So, Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, what is he doing, Mahir? He's in Medina waiting for who to arrive? The Prophet ﷺ. Who's waiting with him? All the Sahaba. But Salman al-Farisi is not yet Muslim. Why is he not yet Muslim? He needs to see for himself that the Prophet doesn't accept zakah. He needs to see for himself that the Prophet accepts hadiyah, gifts. And he needs to see for himself the seal of Prophethood where? Where? On the back of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet arrives in Medina. And a few nights go by. And every night, this is no longer Makkah. This is no longer Makkah. This is now Medina, where the Prophet can make da'wah. And his companions can gather around him. And they can sit with him. And he can teach. And they can benefit. And the Sahaba, that's all they want. They just want the company of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba was, you know what the majdhub is? If you don't know what the majdhub is, ask someone to tell you what the majdhub is. But the Sahaba, they were the first majdhubs on this earth, around Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's all they want. A Sahabi, the Sahaba narrated that they would be sitting in their homes with their wives and their children, and they'll be comfortable. And then what happens? The thought of the Prophet comes to their mind. Then they become restless. Their wives are not enough now, children are not enough. The heart desires the Prophet also. So they would remain restless until they would leave home. Some of them would go sit in the road just waiting for the Prophet to leave his home so they could see him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Imagine, Shaykh Shafi is your teacher. And you have so much love for him that while you're sitting at home on your Xbox, Shaykh Shafi comes to your mind. So now you don't want the Xbox any longer. So you go, Shaykh Shafi lives in a Raft Road. So you go to a Raft Road and you sit outside, waiting for him just to come out so you can see him. How does that sound? That was the Sahaba when it came to Rasulullah. The Sahaba would go sit outside the home of the Prophet just hoping that he comes out so they can see him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. The question is, would you do the same? Right? In Tarim, the students are like that. There are students that just sit outside Habib's home. They can't see him, they just want to see his home. So the idea of being connected to the pious, it's the best lesson that can tell you what the Sahaba are like with Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's the best way for you to experience, even though to a lesser degree, what they experience with their bond and connection to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And therefore, I say again, if you have not experienced this, then there's so much for you to still experience in life. ما لذة العيش إلا صحبة الفقراء. So Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, the Sahaba gather every night. The Sahaba come and they sit with Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They learn from him, they talk to him, they benefit from him, almost like a summer. And Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, he was working on a date farm for Jews. He had some dates that belonged to him. And he came to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he brought some dates on a plate. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, he came and he said, this is sadaqah, meaning zakah. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family, the Ahl, they cannot eat zakah. So he gave it to his Sahaba and he distributed it among them. Those of them that could receive zakah, he gave it to them and he never participated. So Sayyid Salman al-Farisi leaves it in his mind. How many boxes tick? One box is ticked. Ahmad, come sit right here. Right here. Alright? One box is ticked. If I asked you about the story of Salman al-Farisi later and you don't know, one box is ticked. Next night, Sahaba is again gathered with the Prophet ﷺ. Another summer. And Salman al-Farisi now comes with another plate of dates. And when he presents these dates to Rasul ﷺ, he says, Ya Rasulullah, this is a hadiyah, it's a gift. So the Prophet ﷺ says, from this we can eat. So the Prophet eats from the dates and he shares it with his Sahaba as well. So now Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi has how many boxes ticked? 2. The third thing now is he needs to see the khatam on the Prophet's back. But how do you do that? How do you see a protruding piece of flesh on someone's back and they're wearing clothes? So what he does is he's standing on the right of the Prophet and he's standing on the left and he's trying to see. But all along, Rasul already knows who Salman al-Farisi is. And the Prophet already knows that he came to determine to have these 3 box check. And the Prophet gave him time. The first night the Prophet said we don't eat zakah or sadaqah. And the next night the Prophet showed him that we're eating dates. And now the Prophet knows he needs to see the khatam on his back. And he sees Salman al-Farisi trying to him on his right to his left. So he said, Ya Salman, why don't you ask me to open up my clothes so you can see the khatam on my back? So the Prophet opened it up, he saw the khatam and he took the shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Salman al-Farisi was among the Jews and the Christians in all of Medina al-Munawwara. He was the most well-versed because he lived longer and he spent time in the greatest company of the greatest Christians of the time. And they were all upon monotheism. All the Christians he spent time with was upon monotheism. They believed in one God and not in the Trinity. And he had knowledge of the scriptures. So automatically, the Jews respected him. He had knowledge of the Old Testament more than what any other Jew had, so they respected him. But now they're seeing this highly intelligent, well-versed scholar. What is he doing? He becomes a Muslim. And then on top of it, he starts obeying every single command of the Prophet ﷺ. He starts following the Sharia in its entirety. Right? So they come to him one day and they want to mock at him. Now this hadith teaches you and I what our attitude must be towards the minutest rule that comes from Allah. The minutest hukam that comes from Allah. And there's no hukam ruling that comes from Allah that is minute. Right? And what happens? They come to him and they say to him, they're making fun of him. They say, Ya Salman, it's as if they're saying, you are such an intelligent person and you have so much knowledge of the scriptures, of the Old Testament and the New Testament. And you're such an amazing academic, right? How is it that we've come to learn that the Prophet taught you how to use the toilet? You're such a great... The Prophet had to teach you how to use the toilet. They're mocking at him. But how did Salman al-Farisi see that? Salman al-Farisi responded, بكل فخر, with all pride, not in himself, in the law of Allah. He says, yes, he taught us to enter with the left foot. He taught us to leave the lavatory with the right foot. He taught us to sit down when relieving ourselves. He taught us to use water to clean our privates after relieving ourselves. He took pride in the fact that the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covered everything that you can think of in your life. Allah's law gives you and I guidance. There's nothing for you and I to use our imagination. Now, Imam Haddad, for you to know Allah's ruling regarding every situation can be very challenging. It requires years and years and years of study. Our brothers that are now in Lugha, you're going to start with the Risala Jamia, and then Safina, and once you come to your Ibtidaiya, you're going to do the Mukhtasar, and from the Mukhtasar, I think, doing the Muqaddimah, Hadramiyya, and then you have to do what? Abu Shuja, and then Yaqut, and then Umda, and then Minhaj. And the Minhaj, if you really want to gain mastery in it, you may have to do it 3 times or 4 times. And then you've covered most of the Ahkam Shar'iyya, but doesn't mean you know all of it. Not everyone has that capacity. So Imam Haddad, rahimahullah, he said, what is wajib upon every Muslim is to learn how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as your day requires. You must know how to make 5 times daily salah. You must know how to fast the month of Ramadan. You must know ahkam of tahara. You must know what is required when I want to recite Quran. Right? And then depending on what activity you're engaging in, before engaging in that activity, you need to learn what to do before engaging in. She's brother now, what's your name again? Hey? Do you have a bank account? Who has a bank account here? What's your name? Abdulaziz opened up a bank account. He needed to open up a bank account. What Imam Haddad is saying here, if you want to open up a bank account, that's something new you're doing in your life, you need to know what Allah's law is regarding that bank account. So did you study the law, what a bank account means? What type of a bank account you have? With what bank? FNB. What makes it Islamic? How do you know that the contract that you're engaging in with the bank is a halal contract? So, Alhamdulillah, fortunate for, what did you say your name is? Fortunate for Abdul Aziz, he's going to say that FNB has a group of scholars and they stated that this product is halal, which technically suffices. But that's not always the case, right? It's not always the case where I can just say a group of scholars, they approve this as Sharia compliant and therefore, because there's many things that people engage in all the time. If Rafiq needs something done on his teeth, right? His wife says, Rafiq, you can straighten your teeth a bit for me. And Rafiq is so in love that he just wants to do whatever his wife wants from him. So he goes to straighten his teeth. But now, before he straightens his teeth, he needs to know, what does Allah say about it? Does Allah allow me to do this? Does Allah not allow me to do? I'll leave that to you. Want to know? You can ask some of the senior students. Is it permissible for you to go and straighten your teeth or not? That's Allah's law. You need to know, what does Allah want? Does Allah allow it? Does Allah not allow it? Fortunately, most things that you're going to come across in life, there'll be more than one opinion. So it makes things easier for you. If there's more than one opinion, it makes things easy. Therefore, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that اختلاف أمتي رحمة. In a weak hadith, he said that the difference of opinion within my ummah is a mercy for my ummah. Right? Because many scholars, they say that straightening your teeth is تغيير خلق الله. You are changing the form in which Allah created you. And that's haram. And others, they said, it's permissible based on whatever arguments they presented. And there, Rafiq now, because of the ikhtilaf of the ummah, there's mercy for him. He can now obey his wife. I straighten his teeth. Yes, right. Straightening your teeth is using braces now. So the point is that everything I want to do, I need to know. Imam Haddad is saying, I need to know how to live my daily life, how to cover my awrah when I leave home in the morning, how to make wudu, how to make fajr, how to clean myself, how often I need to clean myself, what hairs need to be trimmed regularly, what hair should I ideally be growing, such as my beard. And I need to know how I need to be obedient to my parents and not be disobedient to them. What is disobedience? Right? I need to know these things. Then I need to know my teachers, the respect I must show my teachers. And this is something I actually wanted to mention to our Hifz boys a long time ago. The Hifz boys, just give me your attention. You're all very small, young boys, right? The nurturing of a young child, especially in our madrasa, is such that you need to honor and respect all your teachers. Is all the Hifz boys listening to me? This applies specifically to our Hifz boys. You are here to respect all your teachers and to honor all your teachers. And one of the best ways that a young boy can honor his teacher is whenever he greets his teacher is to kiss his teacher's hand. I see many of the Hifz boys, they don't kiss their teacher's hands. That's not the nurturing, that's not part of the nurturing of an environment of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And an environment of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, young boys, when it comes to their teachers, they kiss their teacher's hand. In fact, all the teachers on the madrasa. And that is something you need to keep in mind. Right? And you shouldn't have anything in your heart stopping you from kissing your teacher's hand. That's the least way, that's the minimum way in which you can honor and show respect to your teachers. As you get older, that's a different story. Therefore, I'm not speaking to the older boys in the kitab section. That's between them and Allah and what honor and respect they have and what. But the younger boys over here, your tarbiyah, your nurturing in a madrasa such as ours is Every teacher of yours, you must kiss their hand. That's the least way in which you can show honor and respect to your teacher. Khair, Maya? Okay, Maya? Hello? Okay? Say yes, Shaykh. Tamam. So, how I should honor my teachers? I need to know Allah's law and Allah's rulings. So I need to know how to live a day by executing Allah's commandment and abstaining from His prohibitions. And then, whenever I'm doing something new, I must go find out what Allah's law is regarding that matter. That's what Imam Haddad is saying over here. Al-ilm al-wajib ala kulli muslimin أن يعلم وجوب جميع الفرائض. He needs to know how to fulfill all Allah's commandments. He needs to go and study how to do that. Then that knowledge suffices him once you know how to fulfill Allah's commandments. Beyond the daily commandments of Allah that he needs to follow and execute, there's always new things coming into his life. Another thing about kissing your teacher's hand, this applies to everyone here now. Right? If you have a father and you don't kiss your father's hand, then maybe you're coming to the wrong madrasa. Any young man, any man, young or old, that is here with us in our madrasa, that does not kiss the hand of their father, that's a big problem. That's a big problem, because your father sacrifices that he made for you demands that you show him the utmost of respect. And if kissing his hand is the least way to show your father respect, right, then how can I be showing him the utmost of respect if I'm not doing that which is least? And therefore, if you're not accustomed to kissing your father's hand, make it part of your custom. And I also promise you that if you start kissing the hand of your father or your teachers, young men, through that action, you will start developing, you will start respecting your teachers more. And for all our brothers, you will start respecting and honoring your fathers more. And that's what the Sharia wants. The Sharia wants you to make ta'zeem of your fathers. And by kissing the hand of your fathers, you will start developing respect for your father in a way that you would never have imagined before. So keep that in mind. So whatever new thing I'm doing, Imam Haddad is saying, know what is Allah's law. Opening up a bank account, know Allah's law. Going to the dentist, know Allah's law. Going to a doctor, know Allah's law. All right? One of the mashayikh asked me the other day, a lady wants to have contraception. Know what is Allah's law? Hey? Contraception. You ask me now, what is contraception? MashaAllah. Now some of the questions students ask, it speaks of the innocence of students, which is like really beautiful. So a contraception is something that a lady would take to avoid falling pregnant. No. So can she take contraception? Can she not take contraception? I get married. I want to know if I can family planning. I want to know if I get married, can a man perform azl or not? You know what is azl? Azl, the Latin term is coitus interruptus. It's like such an ajeeb term. Ask someone who's older to explain to you what is azl. I'm not going to explain it now, this stuff. Can I have azl? Can I not make azl? What is allowed when I'm getting married? What can I do? What can't I do? I'm getting older. There's a girl I like. Can I have a girlfriend? Can't I have a girlfriend? Everything in my life, Imam Haddad is saying that over and above your daily life, whenever you want to do anything new, the first thing you must ask yourself is, what is the law of Allah? What does Allah want from me? And that's the essence of this. So you must know what is wajib, you must know what is recommended, you must know what is haram in your daily life. That is compulsory upon you. Right now, as you're sitting here, it is an obligation upon each and every one of you to know exactly what Allah wants from me in every day of my life, my daily life. As for things that is not part of my daily life, that I'm going something new that I'm going to introduce into my life, before I take that step, I must know what is the law of Allah. I want to invest, what is the law of Allah? I want insurance, what is the law of Allah? I want to finance a vehicle, what is the law of Allah? I'm going to a doctor. What is the law of Allah? A gardener coming to my home. I haven't employed somebody before. What is the law of Allah? Everything I need to ask myself, what is the law of Allah? And if I don't know the law of Allah, I will be similar to the Moroccan worshipper that committed bestiality with a donkey, thinking that it is halal. That's an extreme example, but our communities on a daily basis, we are guilty of the same thing on account of ignorance. And another important thing that you must know is that your ignorance won't be a reason that you're going to be pardoned tomorrow. If you're engaged in something and you did not find out the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you commit haram, you'll be questionable about it, answerable to that on the day of judgment. If you're driving on the N2 160 kilometers an hour, and then a traffic officer pulls you over, and he says to you that you've been speeding, I'm going to give you 1,000 rand fine. And you tell the traffic officer, I didn't know I can't drive 160 kilometers. What's a cop going to tell you? He's going to laugh at you. Your ignorance doesn't mean that you're not going to get a fine. On the day of judgment, when you stand in front of Allah, and Allah asks you, Mahir, why did you say, I didn't know? No, not a good enough answer. Allah will say, why didn't you ask Shaykh Shafi? Why didn't you ask Shaykh Khalid? Why didn't you ask your teachers? Why didn't you ask? Right? And therefore, the essence of this is, if I do something new and I don't know Allah's law, go and find out. Before I engage in anything, find out what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. So that I can ensure that in all of my existence, I'm always living a life that is pleasing to Allah, executing His commandments and abstaining from His prohibitions. And then the last thing, the very last thing, and this we benefit from the story of Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiallahu ta'ala, and is that not only should I be doing it, but in my heart, I must feel that if I do what Allah wants, it's the best thing that I can ever do. If Allah has made something haram, it's the worst thing that any person can do. And if Allah has made it compulsory or halal, then it is the best thing that I can do if I'm doing that which Allah has made halal. Even if it doesn't make sense to me. If I can invest monies in a company that is halal, and I'm only going to make 100,000 rands profit, or I can invest in wine and khinzir, right? With what's the name of the beer company? SAB, and I'm going to make 200,000. In my heart, I must feel that even if I'm going to make 100,000 in a way that Allah has made halal, it is 1,000 times better. 100, it's 1,000,000 times better than 1,000,000 rand that I can make elsewhere, but it's haram. In my heart, I must feel. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi, he took pride in the fact that the Prophet taught him how to use the lavatory. We need to take pride in every aspect of our religion. Everything that comes from Allah is the best. No questions asked. Is it break already? Ajib. May Allah allow us to always be in His obedience. And may our hearts be filled with pride, not negative pride, where I think I'm good. No, pride over the fact that I follow the law of Allah. And there's nothing better for me than the law of Allah. And in everything I'm going to do in life, I want to make sure that I'm following whose law? Allah's law. And walking in whose footsteps? Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's nothing better for you and I in this existence than Allah and His Rasul. Because if the whole world is against me and I have Allah and His Rasul on my side, who can do anything to me? Right? If the whole world turns against me, but Allah and His Rasul is with me, khalas. But if the whole world is with me, imagine 6 billion people all on your side, but you're going against Allah and His Rasul, what's going to happen to you? Khalas, you're going to fail. You're going to be destroyed. So my whole life must be Allah and His Rasul and doing what Allah and His Rasul wants. Ameen. May these meanings enter our heart today and may we implement it for the rest of our lives. Ya Rab, protect us from doing that which is displeasing to you. Protect us from adopting a way other than the way of your Rasul. Bless us in Shaban. Allow us to reach Ramadan. Ya Rab, bless us in Shaban. Allow us to reach Ramadan. May this Shaban be a big Shaban. And may the Ramadan that lies ahead be the most amazing and fruitful and beneficial Ramadan that we have ever experienced. آمين يا رب العالمين بهذه النوايا وبما نوى سلفنا الصالح وبما نوى سيد الحبيب عمر وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة. What time does break start? Huh? What time does break end? Just read the last part. يا ربنا اعترفنا
يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اعترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لقاء أشرفنا فاتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبا واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع آمين ربي اسما فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سور بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سور بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سور صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عداد طش صحبي والحمد لله في البدء والتناهي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه. الفاتحة.